I was in Austin, Texas yesterday. I've got the sunburn to prove it. The Every Given Saturday tour made a trip to Alabama, Texas. Some questioned our logic, but we were sound and we got it delivered. How can you not be romantic, by the way, about big noon kickoff? How can you not be? When does it not deliver for you? We've been to so many of those Fox noon kickoffs, 11 a.m. local time there. Jesse Collin, has it ever not delivered? It always delivers, and it delivered again yesterday. We were there. What an atmosphere. I think the Texas crowd, man, they came through. It was about 115 on that field. It was not too far from that in that stadium. They brought it. They never got fatigued. They never tired out. So I thought that the overall game day atmosphere and experience, it delivered. The team on the field did their part, so we're going to dive into it here. I think that how you reacted to this game probably depended a lot on which angle you chose to watch it from. You see a lot of the buildup, this show, of course, being guilty of it included, was about how big a favorite Alabama was. Nick Saban, as you could imagine in the postgame, was not a fan of that. In fact, Colin, do we have the picture? I cannot give you credit because I don't know who took this picture. But in the postgame, I'm in the broom closet that Texas calls a visiting media room. You see Aaron Suttles there, looking sly as always on the front row. You see Terry Saban there in the foreground. There's Nick Saban, I guess, in what we would call the midground. Look at your boy there in the background. I hate that we can't zoom this out a little bit because standing just off to stage left, my right, was Jimmy Sexton. So me and Sexton are just posted up on the wall over there, and Nick Saban's in the middle. I think that could be a Norman Rockwell painting one day. I really do. But that was the scene post-game. That was after Saban's news conference. What led up to that? I think it depends a lot on how you chose to look at it. So back to action. You had Alabama closed as over a 3-touchdown favorite. If you chose to view the game through that lens, then everything was about Alabama not following through on what their capability was and what you expected. But man, if you just viewed it as a football game where it started 0-0 and all that stuff doesn't matter once they kick it off, it was ultra competitive. It turned out that, even though there were mistakes on both sides, we had a big injury to Quinn Ewers that we'll talk about in just a second. If you look at the box score, which we're showing you here on the screen, very evenly played game. So it all depends on how you looked at it. And I think the angle that you chose, the lens that you chose to look at this game through, it also determines how much you're willing to give credit. Because I look at Alabama, and they certainly fell well short of my expectation. Now, I had expectation for them too. I thought they'd run away with the game. So there's a lot of apology that I guess I owe Texas, which I'm about to give them because I'm about to credit the program a lot. But also, let's remember now, Alabama won this game by 1 point. Alabama won this game, and it's because of Bryce Young, essentially. When you want to know, if you're new to this game and this sport, why people talk about quarterbacks so much, it's because it's that much more an important position than any other person on the field. And even in recruiting, I've always thought to myself, if I started my own recruiting service, I would just value 5-star quarterbacks double or triple what I value other 5-star players. Now, as it stands, that's not the way we do it, but that play that we just showed you right there, Bryce Young escaping a sack and probably 20, 25-yard run downfield, probably ended up changing this game. He's just better than anyone else. He's just the best player in college football right now. Easily, well, I'm not going to say easily. He's the best quarterback in college football. If you want to do the whole positional comparison, which is a waste of time, be my guest. He was 15 of 19 for 136 in the fourth quarter alone. That's really when the game was decided. It's when most of them are decided. Will Reichard, kicker for Alabama, was money, as he has been his entire career. I thought Jalen Moody, their linebacker, played an incredible game. Terrion Arnold, who I don't think got the start at corner. He's a true freshman. I guarantee he gets the start moving forward. I thought played the ball as well in the air as we've seen Bama corners play in quite a while. Jahmyr Gibbs ended up being their best receiver, statistically. And that may sound strange to you because Jahmyr Gibbs is the starting running back for Alabama. He had 74 yards receiving. The rest of their wide receiver room had 109. So you're looking right now on the side of the screen at Alabama's receiving totals yesterday. Latu came back. He's a tight end. Jace McClellan's a running back. So you can either look at that and you can say, man, Alabama underachieved, which they did, and we're going to address that. But you know what had a big impact on that? Texas. Texas had a big impact on that. Winning the line of scrimmage, especially DL versus O-line, Texas had a lot to say about that. Crowd noise had a big impact. This was one of the first tests for Alabama going out on the road since 2021 when they struggled mightily in those environments? Data is incomplete, at the very least, because they looked very suspect, a staggering amount of penalties. They barely had more first downs than total penalties yesterday. Will Anderson, Saban was asked after the game, what did you think? And essentially what he said is, well, aside from critical penalty after critical penalty, played a really good game. Yeah, that's true. If you could erase those sorts of things, Will Anderson did play a really good game. He came up with a big sack, but we're watching some very uncharacteristic stuff in the B-roll from 31 there in crimson and white. So I looked at Texas yesterday because as I went back, I chose to look at the game just through the lens of, 0-0, start of the game. Let's tee it up. Let's go. Texas forced Bama's hand in this game. And there's going to be a lot of wringing of hands and gnashing of teeth about play calling for Alabama, about the game plan they had going into this thing, about how suspect it was. And a lot of that's valid, but I'm going to tell you, I think it all stems from them getting something from Texas that greatly exceeded what they thought they were going to get. I think it's very obvious, and I suspected this going in, that Nick Saban was keenly aware of the environment. He was keenly aware of what the weather was going to be like yesterday. And I think they believed that they could dictate terms on the ground. They did not have to go in and throw the ball all over the place. They had a 2 or 3-headed monster at running back and the offensive line to win on the ground. I think they wanted to condense the game. I think they wanted to shorten the game, and they failed miserably in trying to do that. They could not run the ball. McClellan broke a long run, and I'm not the kind of guy who says if you take away their best play, otherwise they were average. What I'm saying is if you're looking for consistency on the ground, they didn't really have it. They didn't have it, and you can tell by the amount of times that they continued to try and feed it to Gibbs between the tackles, and it was not happening. And all of a sudden, when you get to the end of the game, I saw College Football Nerds, our buddy. I encourage you to check out their channel, by the way. I saw them tweet out a stat earlier this morning that made a lot of sense. I didn't really have the number in my head as I was watching live, but they kept running that play clock down and kept running that play clock down and kept running that play clock down. Bama only had 19 snaps with over 6 seconds to go on the play clock. That part's not Texas. That part's Alabama. But I think what happened is Bill O'Brien knew his game plan going in, and Texas kind of stymies it, and they had no answer. So you can look at an ultra-talented wide receiver room and say, I guess the receiver room is just all overrated, which I think is the wrong take. Or you can look and say, that's more a functionality problem. That's more a scheme problem. That's more a game plan problem. Now, was it an isolated incident, or is that going to be a theme for Alabama moving forward? We'll see. But I look and I think a lot of credit's due to Texas. I don't want to do the whole participation trophy thing, but I do think a lot of credit's due. However, they fought hard against Oklahoma last year and lost, and they lost the rest of the season because of it. This is a huge, huge inflection point for both these teams, really. For Texas, it's an inflection point because they went toe-to-toe with the best program in the country. Whether that's the best team in the country right now is very much up in the air. I know the AP dropped him to 2. We'll see what the JP does with him Tuesday night. Really irrelevant right now because you won't have to know how good they are until December. But in the meantime, Texas went toe-to-toe with them. Texas got a taste of what that national spotlight is like. And I don't mean on national TV. I mean everyone watching, expecting you to fail, and you didn't fail. You lost the game, but you over-delivered in many areas relative to what people expected from you. What do you do with it moving forward? Because Quinn Ewers is out 4 to 6 weeks, according to Pete Thamel. Hudson Card's banged up. The status of Hudson Card right now, you saw him limping around late in the game, thought he played like a warrior when he was in there. You saw him, he looked worse for wear. We'll see how he plays. They got UTSA coming up this Saturday. I think the line on that thing's 13, 14, somewhere like that. So it's going to be another competitive game. Does this game beat them multiple times, or have you seen a change internally? Has the culture changed? Have the dynamics shifted to where they use this and they bottle it up and it's a springboard, and all of a sudden they dive into Big 12 play and they're better for having gone through what they just went through? We've seen Nick Saban teams taste their own blood in the past and end up be better for it. Conversely, when you're talking about Alabama, is that what they do with this one? Because last year they struggled on the road and then struggled a couple more times, and I really wonder, when you look at their road schedule coming up, they got a trip to Arkansas, they got a trip to Tennessee, they got a trip to LSU, they got a trip to Ole Miss. Really doesn't get easier on the road for them. Okay, so this is either going to be an evergreen problem throughout the entirety of 2022, or it'll be like one of those years in the past where you see one of those results, and then 2 months down the road, you're saying, wow, remember when Bama struggled at Texas? Whew, it's a far cry from what we're seeing from this team now. The concern over the wide receiver room at Alabama is valid because the numbers back up that it should be valid. I'm in the opposite camp that I've heard a lot of people residing in. I don't think they lack the skill. I don't think they lack the personnel. And in fact, I don't think they lack the top-end speed there. Kobe Prentice can run. Isaiah Bond can run. Harrell can run. They're not being featured enough, and there's a good reason why they're not being featured enough. So I don't pretend to understand the intricacies of their personnel and what a guy can and can't be trusted to do. What I'm saying is that's a developmental problem or a scheme problem. It's not a personnel problem. About 98% of programs in America would trade their receiver room for Bama's in a second in terms of pure skill and talent. So it's not a talent issue. They got plenty enough capable guys in there. Ja'Cory Brooks is plenty capable enough. Jermaine Burton's plenty capable enough. If you can't put them in the right position, if you can't scheme them open, if you can't develop them 6 days of the week to perform on the 7th day of the week, that's you. I'm not necessarily even pointing out a position coach. I'm talking about the offensive coordinator over there as well. So I think one of the biggest themes to watch moving forward this year is you lost the best coordinator you have ever had in the Nick Saban era a couple of years ago. You faced him yesterday. He's the head coach at Texas. You replaced him with Bill O'Brien. Last year, there were some groans, there were some murmurs, but he took you all the way to the national championship game. You had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback. Was it because of one in spite of the other? That's the question that Bama fans are still trying to wait to see. But the quarterback I want to talk about the most as we move on from this game is Hudson Card. Hudson Card came in yesterday. Okay? Hudson Card had a battle with Quinn Ewers throughout fall camp. Quinn Ewers is named the starting quarterback at Texas. I think that was the right call. Doesn't matter if I don't think it's the right call. Quinn Ewers went down yesterday. Hudson Card came in. Hudson Card banged up himself, kept Texas in the football game. If you talk to folks around the Texas program, they all love Hudson Card. But anyone who's been in competition knows there are first-row guys and there are fourth-row guys. The first-row guys are the alphas, they're the leaders, they're always in the front of the line. And the fourth-row guys can have varying degrees of skill set, but they're more comfortable sinking back in the pack a little bit. Quinn Ewers is a front-row guy. The book on Hudson Card is he's been a fourth-row guy. Plenty capable enough, he can win you a game, but he's a fourth-row guy. You don't have to always be that way, is what I'm saying. And I am so interested to see how Quinn Ewers recovers, but in the meantime, how Hudson Card uses this yesterday. Because if Hudson Card is able to gain confidence from playing in that environment against that team and playing well enough to win, really, then you could see a Stetson Bennett situation there. I don't mean to correlate it as, well, it doesn't matter when Quinn Ewers comes back, he's not going to start. No, each situation is unique. What I'm saying is you don't have to go back too far to see this, guys. 1 year ago, JT Daniels goes down for Georgia, and they got a backup who no one, myself included, ever expected anything out of. A few months later, he had confetti raining down on top of his head. They won a national championship. His name was Stetson Bennett. The program was Georgia. Hudson Card has got an opportunity right now to lead the Texas program. For how long? Could be a few weeks, could be a few months. That's up to him. But man, it's time for him to step up on the front row. Texas needs it more than ever because that's a team that if you have that kind of play at quarterback can win the Big 12 this year. I thought their defense showed they have made leaps and bounds improvement. You've got a stud, couple of them really in the backfield. You've got an offensive line that more than handled themselves yesterday, especially in the face of what may be the best defensive front they face all year. Can Hudson Card at least hold serve and at most thrive with this opportunity he's been given? That's what I look forward to seeing with Texas because I think he's got the ability. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure to leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.